We're going to get started in about a minute. They'll stick around. The sponsor of this candidate forum, and you will see many of the other members walking around with lancers on with their names on it, so stop and ask them a question if you need to. We're going to do things a little different tonight. Each candidate has been given 8 minutes. These questions are on the screen behind me, and there was handouts if you picked up one at the desk outside. The order was decided, in the order that they're going to go in, was decided prior to, are some of the things that you believe in. But please acknowledge that these 4 people have taken a bold step. They are taking a step to represent you and me. Your decision or disapproval of a candidate should be given on April 7th. No, we wouldn't boo, would we? And finally, we want to give you a chance to ask questions. We will have a microphone, as you see right there in the middle, and we're not going to collect your questions. You are going to spend the time contemplating and deciding what question you want to ask. Only one question per person, and you have 1 minute to discern your question. All candidates will be answering your questions. First, the candidate to speak will be Justin Arnold.
Well, first of all, it's great to see so many people here tonight that care about Kirkwood's future. I think this is an incredibly important election, so it's great to see such a great crowd out there. Thank you to the Kirkwood Social Justice Coalition for hosting tonight. Thank you to a few things. The first of those was a town with small town charm and character. The second, obviously, great schools for our young kids. We wanted somewhere safe enough for the kids to ride their bikes or for us to walk to get coffee. But most importantly, we wanted a community, somewhere we could move to, get involved in, plant our roots, and someplace where we knew our neighbors. That was really important to us. And so for us, Kirkwood was really a no-brainer. And it's been the best decision that we've made. Today, I have a 9-year-old daughter in Kirkwood Public Schools. We have a 1-year-old son who took his first steps this last weekend to come back to the Kirkwood that we fell in love with. And so that's why I'm running, and it's really important for me that we fell in love with. And so that's why I'm running, and it's really important for me that the decisions that council make, that they're in that context. Now, professionally, I'm a government relations attorney. What does that mean? I work with state and local governments on legislation and regulation. And in doing that, you see governments that work really well, really efficiently, and you also see governments that could improve and do things a lot better. I've also served on the Planning and Zoning Commission the past 2 years. Running for this race was really because I wanted to make sure that the decisions coming out of council not just preserve the Kirkwood that we all love, but really, I think it's important that we make it a priority that Kirkwood remains a place that people can afford to live, so they can stay here and live here, but also so that families can move here 20 to 30 years from now. And I think that's coming out. And so it's incredibly important that you all stay involved. But City Council's top priority is to set the budget. And what that does is it really sets the vision for what their priorities are and what they want their community to look like. That is their number one when looking at the budget. These decisions involve the way people live, work, and run their business here. And so the budget is incredibly important for the folks in Kirkwood. But transparency, I think, is one of the most important aspects in that process. And so I've been proposing for the last year that increase the way that you all interact with your government, and that would rebuild a trust with the city's financial situation that I think we're in desperate need of right now. And so I think that's incredibly important. I also think when you talk about our financial situation, the Moody's downgrade, fiscal year 26 budget, fiscal year 27 budget, all of those things, obviously we had to fund what happened with the electric department out of our general fund. And so that made the fiscal year 27 budget outlook incredibly difficult. And so council has to be really careful, not just about how they spend, but where they are going to cut and where they're going to invest in the future. And I think that Moody's downgrade is going to make it more difficult for us to finance infrastructure for your borrower. And so we've got to be really laser focused on that situation right now, and I think that's a top priority. Now, that ties in with infrastructure, which is an incredibly hot topic right now with the water subcommittee that is looking at how to invest in our infrastructure. You know, the way I see the water situation is council set a 1% replacement rate for our aging pipes, but for years we have a system that is aging by the day, and so that is a tough scenario, and so that's why the water subcommittee is meeting. They met today to come up with their recommendation. I'm sure all of the candidates will talk about that. Here's what I think needs to happen next. The water subcommittee is recommending a 1.5 replacement rate with some rate increases. I think the public deserves to weigh in at this point. I think we should hold a series of public forums to give you all the opportunity, obviously, but now we have some upgrades to our system, and so the way I view electric is we have to be very careful with the spending in the electric department over the next few years, because we have to get those electric reserves back to where they need to be so that the electric department can function on its own and not have to draw monies out of the general fund. The general fund has got to have a chance, along with a new city administrator, to really set the vision for this community for the next, so many years. So it's really an opportunity for those that are going to be elected in this election, and I'm really excited to try to tackle some of those challenges. Now, I want to talk about housing a little bit before my time runs out. Housing is incredibly important for me, but can't find a place here. Like, I empathize with that because my family went through that. But on planning and zoning, I've seen it as well, and here's where I fall on housing. I think that we should be doing everything possible to make the code more flexible so that people can renovate the existing home that they're in. Thanks. I knew it would happen.
I have 10 kids. I know how to do this. Sheila.
Thank you, Fonda. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming, and thank you to the Kirkwood Social Justice Coalition for hosting this forum. My commitment to service began in Ellsbury, Missouri, a small town of 25 leader at Edward Jones, and it stayed with me as I started my business, Spry Digital, and how I contributed to the startup community in St. Louis and served in leadership roles on various nonprofit boards. I want you to know a little bit about me. I'm a wife, a mother of 3 wonderful adult boys, a mother-in-law, and a proud grandmother of an absolute cute one. Kirkwood Human Rights Commission. I also work to strengthen our region through my service with the St. Louis Workforce Development Board, the Tech STL Advisory Board, and the UMSL Ed G. Smith, this is a new name if you don't know that, College of Business Dean's Advisory Council. I'm also a 2-time Titan 100 winner. I'm running for City Council in Kirkwood because it is a moment that demands proactive, transparent leadership. My platform is rooted in responsibility, and anybody who knows me knows I am a responsible individual and do as I say I'm going to do, and I focus on growth for the future. And here's how. 3 essential commitments I make to you. That everyone has a voice, that I'm fully transparent, and I'm who I am, and I'm as on future. So the primary responsibility of the City Council is to be a transparent steward. That means moving beyond just reviewing the budget. It requires you that you have to understand past commitments that previous councils made. We have to manage our current spending, and we have to hold the city accountable through clear dashboards, like Justin said. I know that if you can't measure it, it's the pool of investors. Moody's expects a council and administration to be in sync with a clear long-term plan on rebuilding the declining fund balances and controlling increased operational expenses while experiencing flat and declining sales tax revenue. While a rating adjustment is a signal to watch and cost us, which other similar municipal utility cities average 22% of debt to assets. So let's put that in perspective. If you own a $300,000 home and you decide to replace your, we chose to use $14 million in reserves, cash reserves, for our $48 million electrical upgrades to avoid more debt. I think that was a solid decision. We had the money. But I will assure you that there has to be more rigor. For our year-end surplus dropped to $104,000. So we have been seeing decline in that. As we get close to closing 2026 and we face flat sales tax revenue and unplanned expense, putting the money aside that we were already planned to spend and doing line item discipline. They're also looking at how to ensure our general fund remains stable. We are stopping the unplanned leaks before they happen. Increases for fire and police departments to ensure we remain competitive and safe. To fund that, we have to, and to rebuild our reserves, we're going to have to, when we talk about infrastructure, it's not just the pipes and the wires, we're talking about the foundation of our safety and the value of our homes. That's hard when we see our rates go up. Remember, I know that spending $1 on preventative care, it saves $5 in emergency repairs. I will advocate for us to look at a 20-year rolling capital plan to end the cycle of sticker shock and provide predictable, stable rates for our families, and if they're in crisis.
Time. Al Reinecker.
Can you guys hear me? There you
Yes.
can. All right. I'm Al Reinecker. Fonda, thanks for organizing this and the Kirkwood Human Rights Organization. I also want to thank the other candidates up here. I remember the first time I ran, which was 2 years ago, how humbling an experience it is. And I'm going to make this real quick. I'm not going to go grade by grade. But when I was about 3, my father was transferred to Davenport, Iowa. We lived up there for a few years until he contracted MS. We moved back to St. Louis, where both families were from. And at that time, Kirkwood was unaffordable for everybody. So we ended up moving into the Lindbergh School District. So it's not a new thing that Kirkwood's unaffordable. It's always been kind of a notch, and I'm proud of that. I'm glad that it's like that. So I went through Lindbergh School, Webster. I got married. My family's back there. Marcia, raise your hand. My daughter. 3 of the 5 grandkids are back there. We moved into Kirkwood in 1982. I was working for a steel pipe company as a salesman. And I came home one day and I told my wife, and this is probably 1999, I said, you know what, I'm going to quit and start my own company. She said, all right, you know, that's about as long as the conversation took. Check. And just worked all day and all night like people do when they start businesses. That company's now a $300 million a year international pipe company. I've hired hundreds of employees. I've fired a lot of employees. I've gotten through a lot of economic ups and downs. And been unbelievably successful in business. And the reason I ran for council is I was retired for a few years and I wanted to give back as a council, but after 2 years, our powers as a council member are extremely limited. If anybody ever reads the charter, you'll find there's hardly anything we can do except talk to the CAO. Anything has to go to the CAO, so it's going to be very important. That's the Chief Administrative Officer. So I'm not going to just promise transparency. I'm going to say I've done transparency. And you were talking about the electric reserves and the owning this. I'm on the council on the subcommittee for the water, perpetuity. I mean, that's kind of the decision to me. And I think we kind of decided today, maybe we should just let the voters vote on this. Maybe it should come down to, instead of 7 people, let everybody vote. And I think that's a great idea. So I'm finished.
Thanks, Al. Deb Lab.
Missouri House of Representatives, and during my tenure, I was able to serve on the Budget Committee. So government budgets are not new to me. With this experience, I will work with the new city administrator, city directors to put Kirkwood back onto a path. This includes oversight of the appropriations process, monitoring the budget on a regular basis to ensure the budget is implemented with integrity. Utilities have been used to fund general services for our community, including non-utility personnel, fund city activities, and contribute to the building of our Performing Arts Center. Moody's did approve $7 million in elective spending during their tenure, and the previous council had also approved $7 million, which totals 14, looking to cut our budget that's scheduled to go into place August 1st, the start of our fiscal year. The council has been informed of these reductions. I've been at these city work sessions and know staff is working to decrease spending of our budget than if you have Ameren or American Water. This is after years of paying slightly less than customers of these other services. Will our rates go up if we continue to operate our own utilities? Yes. But they're going to likely go up if we sell them. We should keep our utilities, and half of you would go and say we should sell them. I've heard our utilities are what makes Kirkwood Kirkwood. It's the soul of our community. The others say we shouldn't be in the business of maintain local control, giving us local responsiveness. We would maintain the ongoing revenue. We would retain our loyal utilities, and maintaining local control can make a difference to our citizens in Kirkwood. The citizens of Kirkwood should have a chance to weigh in on this important topic. The pool is on its last legs. We all know that. Our pool gets very high approval rates from our citizens. We borrowed money to buy the new building. The council just voted to borrow additional money to renovate it. The sale of the old property and eventually the sale of the water electric buildings will help pay for that new building and renovations. Over the next many years, having all of the action to build in Kirkwood because we are a desirable place to live, we'd all say absolutely. We would also say our schools are terrific. Don't forget about that. But is it also the size of new homes, which can lead to challenges with runoff, different than the codes Justin talked about for renovating? This includes setbacks, water permeability, square footage. We don't have the same restrictions other municipalities have on. The Envision 2035, I have this here this night. I brought props. You have 4 chapters.
Deb, time's up.
Thank you.
Now you can applaud them. Now for questions. I hope you heard the candidates' response and have questions. I have a lot to be answered from the candidates. They will have 2 minutes to respond. Again, no applause. So we'll give you a minute to think, and you got the mic right there. If you would also say your first name.
My first name is Nancy, and I've been thinking about this since I walked in and before that. Is it the city manager or whatever that position is called that is the one who's supposed to be getting information about the reserve total? Is it the council that's supposed to be getting that information from that city manager? What exactly is the process? Who is in the chain?
Thank you. Al, you want to go first?
That's a great question. Everybody wants to know the answer to that. The process should be that the council gets regular budget updates, like a dashboard like these guys were talking about. But in the last 2 years, we have never gotten one. We've asked for them. It does any good to blame previous councils or previous mayors. I really don't. I don't think anybody did anything wrong, underhanded. Nobody has a villa in Italy, you know. What happened was they were too confident in the CAO. And I think he had too much faith in our electric director. And they played around with the budgets. They didn't appropriate money correctly. And You know, do I have a couple more seconds? Well, things that had already been purchased, put in place, and transformers that were hung on poles. So I can tell you, we stopped everything dead to tracks after we found out on August 28th. So that's just not fair to say that.
Time. Deb?
Having served in the State House, I am interested in how current council members say, I didn't get financial information. I think I might go 3 months before I started figuring out a way. They asked, my understanding is they've asked, they didn't give. Stood up and demanded differences to be able to understand. That's what I've talked about. You hire us for fiscal accountability to be this backstop of what's happening in our city. And I think that's important for us all to know. My understanding is perhaps they were budgeted $5 million 1 year and spent 2 of it together, from what I've heard. And honestly, I don't know the financial aspects of why that happened.
Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think Deb and Al have talked a little bit about, I'll take a little bit of a different approach, because I think the question brings up another problem, right? Which is when the city lacks in communication on timely events like, oh, somebody had to be stealing money from the electric department. Well, I can understand why they feel that way. I don't think that that's what happened. But if we're not hearing exactly what happened from the city itself, then people are going to fill in the holes, right? So I think the city could do a much better job at timely communicating. And, you know, it's fine to put it on the website, but we have to be better about showing up where people are, right? Whether it's Facebook or Nextdoor or all these different things that people go to for information in their communities, the city should be proactively looking at ways to communicate through residents. Now tells us where the holes are, and we have a real opportunity to fix it and have controls going forward. And so I'm really hopeful that this problem won't happen again, but we could communicate in a much better way.
Sheila?
So being the last person in this chain, right? Obviously, the council only has authority with the COA, right? That relationship, and there's a relationship that has to be there. And we have to build a trust with each other to have that communication open and honest. Approvals for funding to happen at the same time where things got accelerated for payments, at the same time you had a new ERP system going in, at the same time you had a new finance person happening, at the same time there's some information we don't have to know what really went on. So I believe there's got to be that trust and relationship.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Mark. I'm sure everyone knows about the 751 North Taylor House and this whole perfectly sound historic house, which is totally different if you think about Lafayette Square, Webster Groves, plenty of other places. The Landmarks Commission has that power. And so my question is, what would each of you, I live in one
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Sheila, you want to start?
Sure. So in 2013, my husband and I won a Landmark Association Award for a historic redevelopment in the Gate District. We've only owned old homes. What do we need to do to put changes into our ordinances to ensure that there are better mechanisms to prevent well-maintained historic homes who are in a historic district from being torn down? Otherwise, we will lose our historic attainable houses and small houses and historic houses have a mechanism to be preserved.
Justin?
Okay. No, it's a great question, and my understanding is that the Landmarks Commission had in front, and so I think obviously this situation is really sad because I think that house is ultimately going to come down, and that's because courts traditionally do not really like the rules being changed on someone in the middle of the game. And so, but what I think it's done is illuminate a gap in our code that we should be looking at to make it stronger, to make sure listen, like, we moved here because Kirkwood had character and charm, right? We could have moved to bounds of what we're allowed to as a city. So again, sad situation. I think it's illuminated a problem, though, that again creates a real opportunity for us to look at the code.
Deb?
I will echo what the two have said before me. I haven't read that code. I don't know what it says. I am very interested to see there are citizens that are suing, I believe, the city of Kirkwood who feel the ordinance has teeth and we should be able to block the person from tearing down that home. So I'm very interested to see how that goes through court. Do we have the teeth on hold until that decision could be made? If our current code doesn't have the teeth, then we do need to look at that ordinance and put teeth into it, that when you buy buildings in historic areas or have been designated historic, that they remain that way and you don't have wiggle room about being able to tear it down.
Old houses in Kirkwood, we like old houses. We also like new houses too, though. I like new plumbing a lot better than old plumbing, I can tell you that. I like new windows instead of old windows. I worry about the property rights of the seller to sell it for the highest, who they can't. It's going to reduce the price of the seller. So, I mean, there's two sides to these things, folks. It's a beautiful house. I've looked at the house for years, but the guy who bought it, he wants to tear it down, and I'm sure he's going to put a nice house there. So I'm sure that's not a popular opinion, but that's the way I feel.
That's been in place in Kirkwood for a number of years. So the add-on to that statement is, has the long-term development plan been followed in recent years? Town. Thank you.
Deb?
You may be referring to the Downtown Master report for development. It was revised in 2021. No, I don't think we're utilizing that tonight. If you'd like to look at it, our code doesn't match up with that report. And so we spend a lot of money on a consultant creating a plan that sits on a shelf. I would like to work with the city employees through the administrator to see if we can't purchase. It's walkable spaces. It creates the opportunity for sidewalk cafes, missing middle, attached townhomes, beautiful buildings that you might see up on Lindell in Clayton along the Historic Center Museum, but might be 4 to 6 units. And so the nature of the building fits into Kirkwood beautifully, and we create some multiple housing with it. So I think that plan is there. We should look at it. We should figure out a way to implement that. I think you'd...
So I've had a little bit of exposure to this on planning and zoning, and I will tell you that our current zoning does not match that plan. And the way that zoning has come before planning and zoning, which then goes in front of council, it's usually one-off lots one at a time. But I will tell you that each time that staff brings a rezoning of a particular property, they present it in terms of, it envisions, a downtown that I think would be a little bit different than what we have now. There's no question in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen some major developments that I think are, that fit within that plan. I do think that those developments, we kind of need to see how that's going to shake out. I think they're going to help housing, right? Especially, but I will tell you on planning and zoning, we are asked whether that fits within that recommended land use plan.
Sheila?
With regards to the code, consistent, one of the things I want to bring to the table is a way to ensure when we make plans, like the downtown plan, that we create what I would call a rubric or a decision sheet that says, here's all of the criteria, and here's what's coming to the table, here's how it matches up against the plan. And as these come through, giving that visibility, even when it goes to planning and zoning, to ensure we're going back to that suggested plan and we are making suggestions.
Al?
All right, let me bring a little different angle to that. There is a master plan. There's an Envision 2035, and there's 31 other plans that the city has on shelves in the city hall. Part of one of the plans, but I think the first thing we should do is get rid of half of these plans, and you know, kind of start focusing on what we really want here in Kirkwood.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary. My husband grew up here, so of course we had to move back. And that money was taken, most of it was taken to build a great new theater instead. And that was a city council decision. So I feel really blindsided by that. And I feel like all this redone, but it's basically just kind of painted up what was there before. And this goes back to what you were just talking about. How are you going to listen to community members, have a commitment,
Thank you, Mary.
and follow through?
Exercise and all those things. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Farmington, Missouri, so in southeast Missouri, but in our small town, we had a civic center that had all of those things, and I can't tell you, as a kid, how much time I spent at those things. And so I certainly can see the value to the community. Obviously, council made a choice at that time that the KPAC was the better option for them. Here's what I would say, because I can't go back and undo any of the office. And so I can't tell you that you're gonna agree with me all the time, but I can tell you that I'm gonna listen to you, and that when I go to make that decision, that I'm going to take into account your comments and your questions. So be watching what happens with the ice rink very closely over the next year to make sure that we don't overspend again and have another issue where we can't pay for other things. The city can't afford those kinds of mistakes right now. So, but I'll just say that I will be the type of council person that will be responsive.
And so I think looking at these mechanisms where we can ensure that we're getting all of our decision-making from you, of what is it that you're prioritizing and even thinking about. And so I can't tell you why that happened. Decisions, that's not possible. But if we can at least get community feedback and be engaged in that way, that's what I'll advocate for. And I will listen, and even though I may not personally think it's a way to do it, I'm gonna listen to all of you, because that's what I have to do. And that's what leadership does.
Oh,
I'm used to it, Fonda,
me ignoring you?
especially from you. Mary, that's a good question, and I'll tell you what, to even add to your discomfort, the YMCA in Kirkwood offered to operate a gymnasium over there at the new, so now YMCA is over here, and we don't have a gym over there. So, I wish we had a nice community center too. More active, I should say. What we've done is very nice.
Deb?
Thank you. What I know is communication is the hardest thing. Dates, agendas. I showed up at P&Z one night, all on me. My first clue was the parking lot was empty. The second clue was the door was locked. I hadn't gone to the website to see that night it had been canceled. So communication is challenging even in good times. There needs to be a way that we can work to communicate with people better, not linked, that you can't be at home and watch or go back and watch and see what's going on. This city has multiple times created opportunities. Please come talk to us. We're meeting in the city chamber. Come talk to us about parks. Come talk to us about this topic or that topic.
So speaking of Kirkwood charm and keeping Kirkwood, and also affordability, I want to bring that to like the downtown development conversation. As someone who's toyed with the idea of starting a business downtown, it is extremely unaffordable rent-wise. So I'm wondering, to what extent is that a priority for you? Where is it in any of these plans? And does code allow the council to have any say? And if not, what would you do to make
I think there's lots of models in this community outside of Kirkwood where there are incubators, there are ways that we could, as a community, help bring startup businesses, people who wanted to come together. I don't know the rent, so I would not know exactly what that is, but I think we have some opportunities that we could look at as a community, how do we help support that?
Al?
I mean, I don't think with private property we can do anything about rents. I mean, it's, when I started a business at Kirkwood, I went over to a more inexpensive spot. I hear that from a lot of people, though. I mean, it's unfortunate. What's going to happen is you're not going to move in there.
I have heard of some rents in downtown Kirkwood that just appall me. I was also a small business owner, and rent is very important. I had a friend that sold a business in downtown Kirkwood, and I was amazed at how much the building went for. Just way more than I ever thought it was possible. We could look. Claire is the name of our new downtown business person, and I'm so sorry if I have it wrong. Carrie, thank you. Carrie is, I think, doing an amazing job with our downtown business district, and I think she would probably be open for conversations and generating ideas and what your business idea is and how that might share rentals, something along those lines.
Justin?
Yeah, I'd struggle with this because, especially on planning and zoning, for example, when one of the bigger new properties that is going to be built here in the future came before us, they had to have a certain amount of commercial space in the bottom floor, and that they were going to sell memberships, and that made it available commercial space, right? Like, to me, that's not how the code should operate, but I will say that small businesses have very slim margins, right? And so rents to be in Kirkwood are tough. And, you know, the planning and zoning example just rubs me the wrong way because that's where I feel like places in our code are not being really followed in the true spirit of what we're trying to do, and that's really a missed opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
The vision of our strategic plan states that all are welcome, diversity is celebrated, inclusion is actively rated, inclusion is actively sought. So I would like to know what your stance is on the city's statement on
equality and rendering it to those who may not have it, So I'm very supportive of that. I do think diversity makes communities stronger. Having been a physical therapist, I know that we are still not, accommodating our people with disabilities. Our sidewalks are going that way. Our sidewalks are going that way, the ramps and various things. But a lot of our buildings aren't inclusive of people. I'm not sure, and would support, and that for me the mid-middle, and would support, and that for me the mid-middle housing, the diversity in housing and in neighborhoods, and how we can have enhanced neighborhoods, groupings of homes with a grocery store and
Tell you that I'm really focused on the cost of living right now, because I hear it a lot from younger families, and I think that's why that these recent rate increases are so stunning for a lot of people. It's expensive as to be diverse and inclusive. Completely would agree with those statements, but I think to really be an inclusive community, we got to work on the cost of living in ways that are, you know, manageable. Obviously, we can't change market factors out of our control, but we can't change market factors out of our control, but we can incrementally do.
I have spent 40 years as a woman. I have spent 40 years as a woman in tech, as a woman in business who has helped make sure that not only have I advocated, it has such an opportunity to really take and embrace that and really take us to the next level. And I was at the World Trade Center to the next level. And I was at the World Trade Center today talking to women who are trying to start. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I'm going to start off with a confession. I've spent the last quarter of a century as a rigorous and unrelenting follower of the City Hall and the City Council. And the City Council is the only body within Kirkwood government that's accountable to the public. And you or anyone on the City Council is going to be limited by our current city charter to what information and what changes council members can make to ensure that their decisions. So my question to you all is what parts of our city charter would you recommend to be changed to improve the situation? Parts of our city charter would you recommend to be changed to improve the situation so we really do have transparency? Thank you.
Deb?
Thank you. I haven't studied the charter to know which I would change. I would take exception to the chief administrator to demand that those reports are given to us. To change the charter to allow me to go to any employee suddenly gives that employee at least 8 different bosses. Sheila mentioned it. We need to have with a new city manager, administrator. I think a financial background is imperative right now. A financial background is imperative right now. I think we need to, whether it's writing into the contract or making demands from the get-go, I want financial data. Step over the charter that we've had since, I think, 1980.
All right, Deb. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I don't know yet that we're at the point. I've heard relationship with the council members and the CAO. I do think, like I said in my opening, this next council has an opportunity that even this council currently on did not have, and that is a new city administrator that hopefully is not tied to anything that happened in the past and has clear direction from council going forward. It is the council's job to set the vision for the city administrator to then execute. And so it's going to take a commitment from the next council to hold them to that. And if you don't, my understanding is that they've been promised certain financial information going forward, monthly report.
So if you look at how corporations are run, there's a board, and the president usually reports to the board or the CEO. If you look at how nonprofits are run, there's a board that holds the executive director accountable. I believe the charter, and quote, I may be wrong, says the CAO only has to provide annual financials. I believe you could, if you were gonna make one change, that would be the change I would recommend. The second is that we put clear for very specific metrics, such as our fund balances, and managing our debt ratio.
Well, we tried to hold this CAO accountable. After about 6 months of not getting any information, we gave him a list of things we wanted within 6 months. There was it is like being on the board, Sheila. But if you're on the board, you can pick up the phone and call the CEO of the company and ask him a few questions without getting your hand slapped like I did when I called the financial person. And I was told I was in violation of the...
Before Nancy starts, she's going to step up. Nancy has dedicated, how many years, Nancy, on the council?
12 total.
12 years, and she's going off, so we need to acknowledge. All right, Nancy.
Thanks for that. Regarding our strategic plan, one goal in the city's current strategic plan speaks to environmental stewardship that seeks to mitigate climate change through environmentally focused decisions. To reduce the city's carbon footprint and contribute to energy independence, the city has expanded its electric portfolio to include wind energy, solar. Next strategic plan, likely in calendar year 2028. Would you commit to continuing to support these and additional strategies from practicing environmental stewardship? And if it not, why not?
Thank you. Justin.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for your service to the city. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that we be good stewards of our environment. I mean, you cannot talk about Kirkwood control to have that kind of a strategic plan, and I do think that our current electric department does a good job of trying to source from different places, and I think ultimately that helps kind of keep our costs down. I think we got to be so yes, I would support having that in the strategic plan. I do think that over the next few years we have to be really careful about where we're spending money, and so I think the city should be doing everything within to take precedence over everything else right now.
Sheila?
So I don't want my youngest son to disown me, because he is an environmental young man who manages 33,000 acres of restored wetlands and prairie. So I have learned a lot about the climate and the importance of saving our environment and everything we do, and that strategy I would champion.
Al?
I mean, it's hard to be against the environment, so I'm not going to do that, but yeah, I mean, I think everybody should do what they can to, maintain our environment. The one thing that came to mind, Nancy, when you were talking, though, was a recycling center, which I've used for 50 years. I've gone over there every week and sorted paper and aluminum and steel, and you guys have all cardboard. Well, it turns out that the only thing we're making any money on is that cardboard over there. The rest of it we pay $90 as if we just, didn't even do a recycling program. And I think that's a shame, but that's the reality of the world today. There's no market for recycled goods other than cardboard and aluminum.
Deb?
I certainly think we need to be stewards of the environment for our children. I'm happy to tell you the Green Belt Express, which has only taken about, maybe a decade to get put up. I think it's finally won its last court case. I was on the House floor. Our contract is still in place to get it. I think that should be coming soon. Best understanding in today's changing environment, renewables are cheaper sources of electric. They're certainly cleaner than our coal-generated power is. We need to have competitive bidding and look for good prices, but I think we're going to find good prices in different sources for electric. Certainly our parks offer us that opportunity, planting of trees. We are short, I believe, of trees as far as what comes down and what gets put back in. Can we ability and add more to what we're already doing?
Thank you. Mike?
And in late 2017, the City Council approved $30 million in spending to renovate the community center and theater space, with $25 million of that coming from proceeds of a bond sale. By early 2018, the spending priorities shifted dramatically, so that 80% theater opened. I have not seen one iota of progress on this envisioned theater district. What would you do to promote a theater district? Or do you even agree that we should have a theater district? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the mayor at the time said he wanted to increase our footprint in the show business.
A theater district? Is that
Yeah,
what I didn't understand?
that's
All right.
what some people
All right.
termed.
I just didn't understand
And
that. All right, thank you.
and so
right.
Been on in the arts leadership for 20 years as Grand Center and watching what happened with Grand Center. I just cautioned us to think about the competing districts and stuff, and that there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot to keep it managed. And with our current financial situation, I am not sure that's the priority where we should put our money. I think it would compete with the special downtown district.
So the previous council had this vision, or even goes back prior to that, of the build K-PAC and then put an arts district behind it. 2 years ago, when I was elected with some other people, we were handed that project. The Mrazek property had been purchased for $12 million. The plan last week, so it passed, but I voted against it. The reason I voted against it, I think we should slow down. As far as I'm concerned, I'd leave the public works where it is. Or if we did sell it, I wouldn't put up 220 apartments. I'd put some townhomes in there or something like that, and not try to get every penny out of it that we can. But ideally, just keep the public works where it is. Do something with the Mrazek property. and just kind of back up on the whole thing. I don't know if that's going to...
And so looking at how we might be able to increase, Liz Crabtree, if you all saw, the director of our KPAC, won a business person award from our chamber, was awarded Saturday night. So I think she's doing amazing things for us at our theater. She's bringing in new, different types of shows. So I think she's doing great. I don't know how we expand that. I do think the infill, or I shouldn't say infill, but the apartments, the complex going in on the current public work of that. And again, I know Liz is running as fast as she can to try to make KPAC as profitable as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think I would agree that I think at this point in where the city is at, I don't think we should be, taking additional dollars to put more capital investment into something that we're not going to get a return on, because I don't think that investment makes sense right now. We zone it to this new zoning district, and the idea was we want to make it as flexible as possible, and the code, right, so that we can make this a dynamic kind of piece. But what they brought before us was a rezoning that looked exactly like the contract that they had with the developer for the 202 apartments, right? The stated goal of having a hotel or, commercial or retail that would complement, but ultimately, I don't think that was the right project for that space. Again, at the next council could have a handful of things that they're going to have to deal with that previous councils, kind of engaged them in. And so I think we're going to have to take them one at a time. But at this time, I would not put additional capital expense dollars towards something that we just can't afford right now.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I would like for y'all to elaborate a little bit on how you can move in here. They don't go to school, and it seems like, we need a growing, thriving community of diversified people of all ages.
I didn't hear. Jennifer, what was the question?
How do you see addressing, the lack of affordable housing in Kirkwood?
Okay, we've talked about that a couple times, but I look at it inversely. I'm happy that Kirkwood's the place where people want to move to. There are a lot of young families in Kirkwood. All you have to do is go to the 4th of July parade, that impromptu thing. It's packed with children and young families. So, the first house we bought, we had to renovate it ourselves. I'm not talking about you, Jennifer, but you can't play video games and then expect to move into Kirkwood, So I don't know what we can do as a government.
I think Justin's talked about some of the things in looking at the code inside of planning and zoning, that we allow older buildings the opportunity to renovate a little bit easier than we might afford them now. So every building that's sold, we have seniors that are aging in place or attempting to, that need help with chores and repairs and mowing and raking. Is there some way that we can help provide assistance to our seniors that then when they move on to whatever the next step is that home then available because it's been kept up, and is that a starter home for a new family? This missing middle housing, townhomes, attached townhomes, and the smaller units can have a more attainable price to them than their average size units. And I think there are ways that we can attract people into town. Lofts, one families, studios. I don't know that we have a lot of that in Kirkwood, and I think that's what this downtown development, if we put zoning in place to restrict buildings.
Yeah, I will tell you that when, so we, on planning and zoning, dealt with floor area ratio, and it's basically a complicated way of saying, how much, the example that was given to us was a family that wants to add on above their garage. They're not going to take more lot coverage, right? They're not going to cover more of their lot, which then could have stormwater runoff issues and all kinds of. My view is there's no single silver magic bullet that we have to combat the affordability problem in housing. But that doesn't mean that we should not be looking at ways to incrementally make things better so that people can renovate and stay in their homes. We need a diversity of housing. The missing middle, we approved a project on putting a zoning on Monroe. It's not built yet, but I went into that subcommittee and I said, okay, let's look at this lot. They were wanting, you know, to basically have their garage be a certain size so that they could fit and have the missing middle. I said, okay, well, if we're gonna do that, then let's look at all similarly people that are spacing out of their homes, and then seniors who want to downsize but can't because it's out of their budget. We have to have a mix of those things. The last, 4 or 5 years, we've had the James, we've had the Aria, we'll now have the Commerce site, we'll have the Public Works site. So we've had some big properties there. I think our real opportunities are making incremental changes in the code so renovations happen and we get those missing middle housing options.
So, Jennifer, I have a real passion belief that this community thrives when the people who work here can live here, because that's where you build that true, deep community. And I think it's imperative that we rely on the data to provide units at a lower rate, that we provide priority of that. There are ways that we could look at the ADUs were an example that got passed to make that. The FAR was one. The other is how do we think about, are there opportunities for our employees that we could provide incentives to those in the community to provide that? So teachers and the city workers. So I want to explore that. I don't have the silver bullet, but I've been on the committees and looked at lots of different ways that we can start to look at that. So,
my name is El Gilos. I would like to ask you, as new council members, what programs are you going to pass as a policy to initiate to improve our infrastructure? We haven't really talked about that too much. We'll talk about water and sewer, but I'm especially talking
that we have additional dollars coming in. We've recently started applying those dollars for street repairs. I apologize, I haven't been to a meeting that is talking about streets. I haven't boned up on that one. I don't know if we have a master plan for streets yet. I know we've talked about it. I know it's been in the works, but I don't know, because we increased sales tax and have money, if we...
In the last 2 years, to my knowledge.
Well, but, right, and are we implementing it, and are we hanging on to it?
I'm trying to help you, Deb, on that, answer that
Some
question.
of our, I'm gonna sneak in here because we haven't talked about it yet, some of the streets and all is Vision Zero for looking at our traffic, reducing traffic accidents and fatalities. That's something that's happening with the infrastructure on streets, sidewalks, the bumps in roads at intersections to help have conscious driving.
My understanding is that the TDD money will eventually help with that, and that the hope is that that money that comes through from that sales tax that voters approved will be able to take money currently being spent on streets and be able to spend in other places. I think we got to make sure that that doesn't just cause another problem, right? So if we take money away from streets because we have the TDD, that we don't all of a sudden. I've heard from streets is public safety. If priority number one of the council is the budget, I think public safety's got to be right up there as 1A, and streets are part of that. I can't tell you how many families I talk to that they say, we can't even ride our bikes on the sidewalk, right? So I hear all those things, and so I certainly can understand it. I do know that our score that they use to assess streets is rising. Again, that's an average across the city, so there are going to be pockets that are difficult, but I'm hopeful that this TDD money will help, but I think the next council's got to be careful that we watch how much money we actually need and we don't just automatically pull money from somewhere else because we think we're safe.
Things cost a lot of money, and we've been great. Our guys have gone and applied for grants. They've gotten the grant money, and we delay the project because we ran into financial problems. So we are unfortunately making trade-offs, losing grant money, that we could increase that. there's also the how long Essex took, right? So that delayed lots of other things because all of that was taking too long. But I think we have to prioritize making sure we have a very clear, the rest of you was like, oh yeah, it's March, but they were already, because it was a beautiful day, out patching the holes. So I do know that they're proactively doing the maintenance part. I think the one thing that I would advocate for is how do we work with the St. Louis County and the state better to make sure we're communicating what our partners are doing on our streets that we don't have control over. So I live off of Big Bend, and let me tell you, that project is gonna be fun, but there's still not a lot of communication because it's a county-state project.
From a 50 to 100 grading, and we're taking the worst streets with the worst grades, and that's where the money's going first. I mean, it's very simple. There's a map, you can see what we're doing. We actually got some finished last year. There's big yellow signs saying, here's your TDD money at use or something like that. So it's gonna take some time.
I sense that there's a lot of angst from citizens and wondering about change. And some of you have worked in organizations and been a minority and change to kind of massage or move these things. Because some people said our city plan, we want to look like Clayton. Well, I'll tell you right now, I don't sense that from citizens. They don't want to be Clayton. If you want to be Clayton, then you big hole of a bunch of money that's owed. How are you going to deal with it? And how are you going to change?
It's a great question, and I think that's what citizens are really focused on right now. I can't tell you how often you go knock and not quit until you get an answer. I think that's one way that you go about it. I do think a good working relationship with your council members to build a coalition and consensus to get what you need done. And if you don't get it, then you don't vote for whatever they're trying to get you to do, right? I think there's a clear path there. In terms of the plan, I think we've had some really big projects come in here the last few years. A couple that are still to be built. But I mean, ultimately, I think Kirkwood is Kirkwood because of its character and the uniqueness of its community. And so I think ultimately we have to preserve the nature of those neighborhoods where people live. But I reject the notion that, you know, we can't do both. We can, and we can incrementally get this in the right place. And I think Kirkwood's going to be better off in the next 20, 30 years if we get this right.
I think, Jerry, to your point, that we have to have a plan closing in our community. And so as that goes down, we're going to have to be very conscious about making sure we understand where we're spending the money, where we have surplus, and that we're building those reserves up, and that becomes the focus of where we know the sales tax is flat. And so our revenue stream has, over the last few years, been slowly going down. And we have to be cognizant of that and think about that and the trade-offs we're making. And we're gonna have to make some trade-offs.
End of 27, it's gonna be 15 million. It's just the way it is. The electric department's not gonna make money, water's not gonna make money, sanitation will make a little bit. Sales tax is flat, so there's gonna have to be some tough decisions. But, I mean, I've made tough decisions my whole life in business, so I'm not happy to.
Over the years that sit on shelves in the basement, let's stop paying for consultants. Let's look at what we have. I like the downtown business plan. I think it shows us how we can improve our downtown Kirkwood to be attractive in what we're all looking for. Monitoring and watching the budget is obviously essential. I think you've been hearing that all night long. The acting director has looked at his budget and looked at his budget and looked at his budget, and each time is coming back with savings. I think we need to really evaluate what else is still in there. Is there still something that we could cut that won't harm the citizens of our city? We want to maintain this level of services that we have. But what services are those? Are there services that aren't being utilized that might be able to be trimmed back? So I think there's still have a lot of lots that are likely to be developed over the next 3 to 4 years, or at least in the planning process. So if we can figure out the plan, if we can get everybody in agreement of that and move forward with strong leadership, I think that will help the city grow catch up financially, and then be able to move forward.
I'm Izzy. I just turned 19. And I was wondering if you guys could explain to me the importance of Kirkwood having local control over our utilities. Just because, like, young adults, young families, if we're going to be paying these bills for very long, young families and young people, I don't think that they, most likely or necessarily care about whether it's Kirkwood that has control over the utilities or just another company that arguably could handle it better.
So first of all, I believe we'll take it to the citizens is my champion, is when we take a public utility and privatize it, the priority of the company who is running it is to the shareholders, and the shareholders expect growth and they expect a return. So they get the return on that investment. You are the shareholder. So I think it's a matter of making sure that that is understood, but also making sure we understand that as a community that deeply believes in taking care of our citizens, having that control makes sure that the people who might be in crisis are going to be prioritized over a profit.
Wasn't that girl brilliant? It's my oldest granddaughter. No. It's a good question too, Isabella. It was a little long though. We'll work on being more succinct. Treatment plant. So then we buy all of our water from Missouri American on a wholesale basis, and then we distribute it and we take care of it. And for years, there was a profit shown in it because they didn't maintain anything. Not anything. They didn't maintain enough. So now we have a system that's aged and it's not making any money. So to me, it's like taking 25 financial decision.
I think there are reasons to keep it. Whether or not they're override the reasons to sell it is, I think, for people to decide. Local control would give, when you have a water break, in 12 years I've lived on it, and they were fixed overnight. I essentially didn't know I didn't have water because I was sleeping. And so I think that's what local control of water gives you, is the ability to know how quickly those challenges will be met. The balance, the uncertainty of selling, we don't know. When's American Water going to increase our rates? We don't know. They're under the Public Service Commission. Their rates will be monitored or maintained. Okay, fine, but our rates are going to go up. Sooner or later, our pipes have to be replaced, whether we do it or they do it. Here, I think those pros and cons need to be offered to people to be able to decide that. Local control of sanitation. We own our own sanitation. They miss your pickup, you call City of Kirkwood, and probably within hours, if not the next day, they're back to pick up your trash. And so there is the question for us to decide.
I think everybody up here has summed up what the equation is. I think the city has a responsibility right now to really focus on what we're doing in cost of living. I don't think that continuous rate increases are something that we can sustain as a community. I don't think that we can be inclusive, like I talked about, by continuing to raise rates and take on debt. And so that's why I think we have to really focus on the financial aspect of this. You know, ultimately, I think the public has to weigh in. I don't think 7 people, I think the public should weigh in on that. But I will tell you that, you know, I've heard some people say that, well, Kirkwood can afford higher rates. And I think a portion of Kirkwood can. But I think there are families out there, seniors out there that I know it's a struggle. And the way that ours jumped last summer, it was a shock to a lot of people. So I think we just have to be cognizant of that. Ultimately, I think the residents should weigh in and tell council whether they are okay with paying the increased rates to keep the system and keep it under local control.
Well, our time has come to an end, but first I'd like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank the Kirkwood Social Justice Coalition for putting this together and working very hard. And Karen, our president's here. Wallace is over there. Joni's here. I like to thank the candidates for participating, because it's not always hard. It's not always easy standing up in front of all you folks. Again, they are taking steps to be responsible and make the decisions need them. Finally, I'd like to thank the church here for allowing us to come and open their doors to us. So thank you very much, Kirkwood United Methodist. I want to remind you, as Kirkwoodians are facing, I love saying that word. I've been saying it for a long time. But keep in mind, there's a lot of good things that happen here in Kirkwood. Let's work to make it continue to happen. And good night, safe drive, and glad we didn't get rained on. So good night.